So today's presentation is related to how to use AI to outsmart intelligent threats using RidgeBot by Ridge Security. So before we get started, let's introduce ourselves. I'll start with myself. I'm Dennis Cassidy, Regional Sales Director here at Ridge Security. I've been with the company for over 2 years now, but have spent the last 10 plus year at various cybersecurity startups focused on penetration testing and application security specifically. I'm also joined here by Kevin Sisney, our Director of Sales Engineering. Kevin, if you wouldn't mind introducing yourself and saying a few words here briefly.
Absolutely. Thanks, Dennis. Kevin Sisney. I've been with Ridge a little over 14 months now. I spent a few years at Rapid7 as a senior cyber architect, and before that spent about 18 years as a practitioner. Started out with group policy and evolved into endpoint, EDR, XDR, network, vulnerability and risk management, blue and purple teaming. So I look forward to speaking with you today on AI and how to combat against those threats.
Thank you, Kevin. So we will get into it. Let's start with kind of the problem that we are facing in today's modern age of AI. As consumers, as employees of organizations, it seems like everyone's using AI to their advantage, but adversaries in cybersecurity are no exception. Modern threats are being utilized by AI-powered hackers. They're using AI to move quicker, reach further than ever before. So as a cybersecurity defender, purple teamer, blue teamer, what have you, keeping up with the pace of modern threats is becoming a challenge. And Kevin, I know you've been a practitioner for years and you've seen this happen. What would your commentary be on the current state that we're in?
And, in the research that I've done, it's not that we're seeing anything drastically different. What it is, they're using machine learning and AI to assist with automating, accelerating, enhancing various stages of an attack, which in turn makes them much faster, more personalized, and harder to detect than traditional methods. The spelling, the grammar is gone now. And this technology is a dual-use tool, and we can adopt it as cybersecurity professionals to combat that threat.
Thanks, Kevin. And just a few examples of how attackers are utilizing AI. I'll point out two here. They're more commonly known: social engineering and phishing. If you're at an organization and you're an employee, I'm sure you've seen folks impersonating leadership in the form of text messages, emails, things that look very personalized but are also very nefarious. And then also deep fakes. This particularly scares me. AI can be used to recreate the likeness of someone that might be a trustworthy person for fraudulent purposes. I don't know if you had any commentary on that, Kevin, but these two are, I feel like, are a common denominator for a lot of folks out there.
Well, it used to be a lot easier to, pick out a phishing scam. It's getting a lot harder. And, with generative AI, we can create highly convincing personalized email, text messages, websites that mimic legitimate communications and reference specific details like recent LinkedIn posts, colleague names, and they're using this to trick victims into receiving sensitive information. The grammar mistakes and the obvious red flags of traditional phishing are gone with Gen AI created phishing campaigns. With the deep fake, as you said, they're using it to create a synthetic audio and video to impersonate executives for fraudulent purposes, authorizing large fund transfers. There's a finance worker that was tricked into paying out $25 million after a deep fake video call with the chief financial officer. So it is costly.
Absolutely. And then moving on to a few others, and this is more focused on the topic of today, is malware development, vulnerability discovery, and autonomous attacks using AI. Using AI to mimic the actions that an adversary would take, not just on the adversary side, but as a defender, how do we keep up with the pace of these types of attacks? So,
Right.
Kevin, I don't know if you wanted to
Yeah.
comment on this further.
We're seeing AI assist in writing, troubleshooting, and modifying malicious code to create polymorphic malware that's continuously mutating its signature to evade traditional, signature-based EDR and other types of endpoint protections. AI agents can autonomously scan vast amounts of data from public sources, network infrastructure, to identify open ports, vulnerabilities, even prioritizing high-value targets over harder to reach targets or assets. And then it's planning out those attack paths more efficiently than human operators can. In late 2025, security researchers with Anthropic identified what they had described as the first reported AI orchestrated cyber espionage campaign, where China-linked hackers used AI to automate 80 to 90% of the attack lifecycle from initial access to data exfiltration. So that's a pretty significant chunk of the attack chain.
100%, Kevin. And so we look at some of the traditional security methods when it comes to pen testing and vulnerability management. We look at pen testing done by an outside firm or by an internal red team. Typically, if you can do this quarterly, that's a great practice, but it only leaves a snapshot of a period in time of the effort that's created. It's not covering the entire infrastructure. It could be a portion or a segment of the infrastructure, websites being changed, APIs being changed. So again, very stagnant, very cumbersome, very expensive to pull off, and just a point in time snapshot. And then, of course, there's also vulnerability management tools out there, but with that comes a lot of alert fatigue, noise. How do we understand what's exploitable versus what is not? And Kevin, I know you've been a practitioner for a number of years. I don't know if you wanted to comment further on what you've seen traditionally here.
So my last stint was in financial technologies, fintech, and we would know that an audit or a pen test was coming, and we would work extra hard to clean up any low-hanging fruit. And so it's a false sense of security because everybody does that. They get ready for an audit or an upcoming pen test. With that's just not feasible in today. You have to have more of a continuous threat exposure management model, and you have to constantly look for risk or exploitable risk in your environment.
Absolutely. And then we look at kind of the migration to mitigation and defense, adopt an AI-driven cybersecurity approach. A lot of folks are already doing this, enhance the authentication process, improve employee training and awareness, implement zero trust architecture, and leverage frameworks and best practices. Out of those five, Kevin, which one would you say would raise the bar the most if folks were to take those approaches?
Well, you've heard me say this on calls, Dennis. Your cyber defense is only as secure as your weakest link, and that is an employee in a remote office that is looking at emails. So I really do greatly value employee training. But we have to, security's like an onion in my mind. You have to have multiple layers. And that's more of a proactive security strategy. And it's essential today just because of the threats and how fast they're evolving. We're shifting the cybersecurity field towards AI versus AI scenarios today. We need to look at AI-powered security solutions for threat detection, behavior analysis, automated response, so that we can match the speed of these AI-driven attacks. We need to, that authentication is traditionally important, but we need to get better at it. On every threat report, the top 2 or 3 things is multi-factor and single sign-on, and yet we still fail that today. So we need to get more entrenched with established multi-channel, verification protocols that don't solely rely on voice or video. Again, the employee training. Zero trust. This keeps coming back up. We need to shift from traditional perimeter. We need to quit building taller and more expensive fences and adopt a zero trust model. We need to require strict identity for every user and device on the network, whether it's inside the network or out. And we need to leverage our frameworks that are at our disposal. Guidance from NIST, CISA. MITRE has now an Atlas framework to govern and map and manage AI-related risks. So there's a lot we can do internally, and we need to keep up the vigilance.
Absolutely. And so as part of that, RidgeBot is Ridge Security's flagship product. It's an autonomous penetration testing platform. It also does breach and attack simulation scenarios. So part of what RidgeBot does is it uses AI to think like a hacker, make decisions like a hacker would, and not just identify vulnerabilities, but identify exploitable vulnerabilities, show you the kill chain attack visualization, and then also give you a more continuous idea of where the risk is in your environment across all of your assets, whether those might be internal, external networks, websites, web applications, APIs, IoT, what have you. Anything to comment on there, Kevin?
Yeah, one of the reasons I like RidgeBot so much is as a practitioner, I would have used this tool if it had been available to me. And we'll talk about this in the next slide or two, but I would have tied it into my vulnerability management tool. I would have had it create tickets, tie it into a complete workflow. So, and with the iterative attacks that, our decision engine makes, it really does truly think like a hacker, can pivot, laterally move through the network, which we'll discuss later as well.
Thanks, Kevin. Again, AI that thinks like an adversary. It's using AI to iteratively attack your networks, websites, APIs, your devices, etc. And one of the first pieces of the puzzle with RidgeBot is attack surface discovery, identifying what your exposure is, your shadow IT, your fingerprinting your assets, weak authentication points, and any type of misconfigurations across your network, cloud, applications, etc. This is the initial reconnaissance phase that RidgeBot takes and helps to identify what the blast radius looks like. Kevin, I don't know if you wanted to comment further on that, but I feel like this is a good first step in the RidgeBot methodology. Yep.
Yes, this will help you plan your methodology. Your risk framework allows you to see that full attack surface, whether that's IP-based or fully qualified domain names. You can set this up on a recurring basis, so you have a continual idea of what your attack surface actually is. And, nobody ever finds servers or workstations or switches or anything on their network, and because everybody always knows what's being done by developers and network and even the cyber staff doing testing, things to that nature. With the attack surface discovery, you can see that at a moment's notice at any given time.
Absolutely. And then when we look at some of the other phases of RidgeBot's methodology, it's not just detecting vulnerabilities, but identifying which of those vulnerabilities are exploitable. I saw a figure recently that only 3 to 5% of CVEs are actually exploitable. So how do we identify which ones those are very easily, very quickly across your infrastructure, website, and continuously keeping up with changes? And RidgeBot, as part of this phase, identifies which of these vulnerabilities are exploitable.
Absolutely. And knowing that risk, not based on scoring. Any of you that have been on a call with me know that I absolutely hate scoring. What I want to know is what's exploitable, what's not. And then once I engage that exploitable risk and either remediate it or mitigate it, then I can fall back on my vulnerability tools or my other tools and their scoring and risk mechanisms. But with RidgeBot, you know what's exploitable and you're provided evidence to that exploit.
Absolutely. And as RidgeBot works and finds exploitable vulnerabilities, it also moves laterally. And Kevin, I know you're about to show everyone here a demo of how Ridgebot would do this, but to, I guess, tease it out there, what comments can you make about lateral movement? What does it mean to the audience here?
So, with performing lateral movement, this is a very common technique that allows attackers to move sideways across compromised networks after gaining initial access. And if we can prove that, we can even, chain these attacks to where I can get to assets that are not available from the initial target host. And we can perform lateral movement across data systems with the ultimate goal is data theft and ransomware deployment or system disruption. So it is a big deal, and Ridgebot is very good at exploiting that.
Absolutely. And we will get into how that would look like in practice here very shortly. And then also, Ridgebot also doesn't just, it isn't just a standalone product. It does tie in with your existing vulnerability management systems or IT service management systems. And Kevin, you've been in the thick of it over the years. Did you want to say a few words about some of those capabilities?
Absolutely. As stated previously, so I used a certain vulnerability manager. I used the same incident detection and response and application DAST scanning tool. I would have definitely tied Ridgebot in with that to start the beginning of the closed loop workflow, where I would have validated all of the vulnerabilities from my vulnerability scanner, validated the assets, the open ports, and then tried to exploit those vulnerabilities. And with Tenable and Rapid7, we would tag either the vulnerability or the asset as having a Ridgebot validated exploit. Then your vulnerability and risk management team can use that as their prioritization and then fall back on each individual's tools scoring and risk mechanism. After that's been said and done, with the integration with ServiceNow and Jira, we can shift that cycle a little bit left and create tickets, projects, or cases to help remediate or mitigate that risk. So VM detects, Ridgebot validates and exploits, and then automatic ticket creation, fixes applied, Ridgebot retests. It's a very efficient closed loop workflow.
Absolutely. And then, of course, with Ridgebot, if you're familiar with penetration testing, usually there's a report associated with it. You'll get a full vulnerability and risk report generated by Ridgebot automatically. You're able to see what Ridgebot is doing in real time. Kevin will show you what the dashboard looks like, but it'll give you a good idea if you're an executive of where the risk lies in your environment and what the course of action should be going forward.
Yep. When I was being audited on a fairly regular basis, I was paying tens and tens, just shy of hundreds of thousands of dollars for pen tests and reports that were not much better and were a lot less easy to read than what Ridgebot produces. They are very good, very detailed reports.
They certainly are. So again, schedule continuous testing, keeping up with the changes in your infrastructure and also with adversaries, validating any type of patches that may have occurred, any type of changes, validation. And then again, it's like having a 24/7 automated red teamer on your side using AI.
Yeah, absolutely. We can turn the noise level up. We can look at specific areas of the infrastructure or look for specific risk with Ridgebot instead of performing an entire enterprise-wide scan.
Absolutely. And the idea is here to reduce any of the vulnerability noise that may have occurred previously, honing in on what's exploitable versus what is not, getting to the fixes faster, prioritization, and then evidence-based reporting. So teams aren't wasting their time on issues that may or may not matter or shouldn't need to be addressed right away.
Absolutely. It's about removing risk in the environment and doing it on a continuous basis. Exploitable risk and vulnerabilities are two very different things in my eyes. Risk is just so much different. And going back on the scoring again, I do not see scoring as a very effective way to gauge risk in an environment.
I agree with you on that. I know that's debatable, but I do agree that RidgeBot, the primary outcome is to identify exploitable risk in the environment. So why RidgeBot? We covered most of this, but modern world threats, fight fire with fire, use AI as a defender to hack yourself first, identify risk first before someone else does. We're validating exploits as real. It's a continuous process. We're integrating with your existing workflows, and you can see over time, you'll have a measurable reduction in risk while using RidgeBot, and it starts on day one. And I think that's all I had for slides, Kevin. Unless you have any other comments, I can hand it over to you.
I think it is time. I am going to perform a lateral movement exercise or pen test within Ridge. So I want to give it a little bit of an explainer of what I'm going to do and kind of what this is going to look like. So I am going to, sorry about that. Okay, hands off the mouse. I am going to create a task and pen test one of my brown targets. My brown can access all of my blue. My brown targets cannot access red. Blue can access red. So I am going to do a multi-chain lateral movement attack to where I am going to actually get access to one of the red targets. Okay, on to RidgeBot. So I am going to create a new task within RidgeBot, a pen test task. I'm going to do host IP testing. So I'm going to select that. I'm going to give it a good name because I need to be able to pick it out of a list of tasks, and also my report name becomes my, uses my task name in the future. So I'm going to and I'm just going to give it some good verbiage. I'm going to attack this one target within my list of targets. I'm going to leave everything normal, and I am then going to go to the other aspects of my pen test. So I'm going to look at information recon. I don't need to change any min maxes. I'm going to look for all ports versus common ports. On my exploitation, I'm going to leave it alone. On my post-exploitation, lateral movement's always on, but we have to put in a range to give RidgeBot targets to attack. So I'm putting in a range of assets. I'm going to up my lateral movement depth to 5. And I'm not going to make any other changes. So very quickly, I'm going to be able to check lateral movement, the vulnerabilities and exploits within my network across 7 different assets. And now that's running. It's going to take a while. I have one that I've already done that was completed on the same target. So very quickly, I can see that I have issues. These are my blue assets. Or excuse me, these are my blue assets. These are my red assets. So I was able to actually compromise one of those assets that were in red on the other side of a firewall. I was able to get to one, but not compromise it. If I look at my topology, and I go to my attack topology, I can see all of my nodes that were being attacked or compromised. We can see that one red node that we weren't able to attack in that lateral movement. If I go to my attack topology, I can see very quickly where my lateral movement kicked in. I've got my original target, attack surface of port 7001, Oracle Web Logic, found the exploit, scanned the other network, and I was able to laterally move and exploit these other assets. I was able to get to my red assets through this IP. So I have a multi-chained, multi-pronged, multi-targeted attack going on with Ridgebot. I can even look at those individual kill chains if I need to. Boy, this is a big one. Okay, I'll start at the beginning. We found IP 218, found port 7001, WebLogic, was able to exploit it, found another network, able to get that target, found 8061 open, found ActiveMQ file write vulnerability. We were able to exploit that. Then we found the other network and were able to bridge the firewall and attack a third actual target with this attack. We did over 25,000 jobs, found over 205 vulnerabilities across an attack surface of 1,006. We have 5 compromised assets, exploitation, and then 4 that were post-exploitation, and found 24 exploitable vulnerabilities. Looking at our go ahead.
Yeah, and Kevin, that's just a great example of how quickly, maybe just in over an hour, you're able to cover all that ground and find out where the exploitable risk was in the environment. I think that's just a great illustration of what Ridgebot can do, not just at a point in time, but on a continuous basis.
On a continuous basis. I could schedule this scan to run repeatedly. We list the exploitable risk first and then get into the remaining vulnerabilities that Ridgebot was able to find but not exploit. In looking at my risk table, I see all of the different exploits. I can see which asset that they actually followed. I can even break those down into my specific targets. This was one of my red targets that we were able to compromise. We've got credential disclosures, multiple accounts left open on these, and that's how we were able to exploit it. He's got one of our blue nodes, so we used ActiveMQ to exploit it, and then get over to our third target being 102, which is our red target. After I've done all that, I see where my risk is, then I'm going to report on it. So I'm going to create that report. I'm going to do a standard report, leave all my data in here, generate that. Let Ridgebot do its thing, gather all of that pen test data, the lateral movement stages, and then present that in report format for you to go over. Here's where my task name became my report name, date and time stamp of the pen test task, legal information, and then the start of my executive summary. Testing took about an hour and 32 minutes to complete this. All of my vulnerabilities, my exploits, my scoring methodology, attack surface, exploits by type. And then we get into my business risk summary of what we're looking at, what we've seen, testing methodology and setup, and then asset details. Any open ports across all of my targets, not just the pen test target. And then I get into my exploitable risk. And I am going to show the first one and then get into here's a good example. We've got sensitive information by ActiveMQ. We get full attack vectors, scoring 7.5. If you're looking at criticals and highs, you're not going to patch this. Upgrade any references, and then my vulnerability exploit kill chain. Found the target 218, found 209, found 7,000 open, found 8161 open. Oracle WebLogic, and then ActiveMQ arbitrary file write. So that's a good one. Here's another one that has 3 different vulnerability targets and attacks chained together with this Apache ActiveMQ exploit. We don't disclose passwords within the reporting. We do that in the tool. Again, walking the target and moving laterally within the environment and exploiting another asset. And then here's my second out of 3. And then my third out of 3. Once Ridgebot gets through providing all of the information on the exploits in the environment, it will then give full mitigation and remediation advice against all of the vulnerabilities that Ridgebot finds. If you want to see them, you can exclude them from the reporting. Then at the bottom of the report, we're going to give you a full attack surface detail of the original target being the .218. So very quickly, I got to the bottom of where my exploitable risk was in my environment. I was able to move laterally within my network across a perimeter boundary into a red area through Ridgebot, through those iterative attacks, those chained attacks, and the Ridge brain being able to pivot and relay the different iterative attacks to move laterally within the network. I can tie that in with my vulnerability management tool and also tie it in with my ticketing system so I have that closed loop workflow to find risk, exploit risk, report on it, ticket for it, and then also remediate and mitigate. Okay, back to you, Dennis.
Thank you, Kevin, and for that illustration of lateral movement. At this time, we'd like to open it up to questions. If anyone has them, they can post them in the chat, and we'll hang on here for the next couple minutes if there aren't any.
I'll read a couple of questions from the chat. Does it integrate natively with Session XDR? Ridgebot offers an Open REST API. We also offer 2 forms of syslogout, being Ceph and Leaf. If your tool can take those types of inputs, I feel like there might be some way to at least get that data into the tool. And concern appliances. Okay, on the AI model. So Ridgebot has 2 in-house developed AI models that are installed pre-trained on the appliance. Ridgebot is a self-contained offensive security appliance. No data leaves Ridgebot. It's encrypted at rest and during testing. So we're able to update those models during our twice a month sprint cycle. If there is, like the Oracle EBS we released out of band because it was an important plugin to get released. But typically we will push and update those AI libraries through plugin or system updates. Okay. Okay, cool. Any other questions? All right.
All right. I like to wait until it gets to an awkward silence. Oh, we do have one.
Okay.
How does it work in an air-gapped environment, Kevin?
Ridgebot can be deployed in an air-gapped offline environment. What you would do is manually update it. We have manual or offline update files in our client or partner portal that you can update, and they are updated daily. So it becomes a little bit more of a manual process, but Ridgebot is designed to do that.
Any other questions from the group? Do we have an MSSP model? I can speak to that. Yes, we do. We work with not only larger enterprises and end users, but also we do have a model to support MSSPs in their day-to-day activities for pen testing and continuous threat exposure management. Syed, we can take that offline if you'd like to discuss further.
Oh, I did not see that one. Oh, perfect.
Okay, I think that's all the questions, Kevin. Thank you everyone for joining us today. Hopefully this was productive for everyone. And as you can see, RidgeBot is a tool solution that you can use to defend your environment by using offense. And we really appreciate the time today.
Yep. Thank you
Thank
all
you.
for your time.
Take care.